Welcome to Football Never Sleeps on a Monday night here in South Bend with seasonably wonderful weather. My name is Eric Hansen. The meteorologist in the next square is Tyler James, who looks super serious. And we've got lots to talk to you about tonight, including quarterbacks, linebackers, offensive line, recruiting. We got our subscription special and all kinds of goodies. And so I will start with this. We are taking stock of Notre Dame football as preseason camp moves into week 3. Notre Dame players started preseason training camp on July 31st. The Irish are 86 scholarship players, as far as we know, went over the NCAA limit. ND does not have to get down to 85 until the first day of fall semester classes, which is August 27th. The season opener is 4 days later at Kyle Field in College Station, Texas, against 20th ranked Texas A&M. The Irish checked in at number 7 in the preseason AP poll on Monday. I'm a member of the voting panel, and I had Notre Dame number 6. As I mentioned, we've got quarterbacks and linebackers at the top of the show. We'll get into recruiting, some O-line and D-line chatter later on. And although we'll take your questions and work them into our conversations, we have some other little announcements first that Tyler will get to. So start loading up the queue, but listen to this because we want to talk to you about a special offer for all our content, including the goodies behind the paywall. And it's a really good deal. He's better at math, so take it away, Tyler.
Yeah, Eric's right. It's a heck of a deal. Until Friday night, you can sign up for the first year of an annual subscription to InsideNDSports.com for just $24. That gets you access to all of our premium analysis and recruiting coverage and our scoops over around the Insider Lounge. The details are scrolling below us at the bottom of the screen. Just use the promo code NDCamp24 when you sign up to take advantage of the deal. There's also a link to sign up in the video description below, and you can also find it across the top of our homepage on InsideNDSports.com. And as Eric mentioned, we'll take your questions live throughout the show. You must be subscribed to our YouTube channel to submit comments and questions during the show. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We're on the chase to 3,000 subscribers, and we hope to get there before the season opener. So nice to see questions in here from Eric and Jeff, and bonjour to you as well, Rajan.
Tyler's still on the Olympic high of speaking 4 words of French and knowing a lot about pole vaulting. Okay, we're going to launch right into it then. We're going to start with our opening drive, which is Riley Leonard and the quarterbacks. So Marcus Freeman, the Notre Dame third-year head coach, has yet to anoint a starter, but nothing in the practices that the media has viewed or the interviews we've done with the players and the coaches would indicate otherwise, including the interviews we did Saturday with the quarterbacks. So, Tyler, from the observations only in practice, let's take the interviews out right now. From the observations, what's been your impression to Leonard at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to note that we haven't seen him do much against the defense since the first practice.
We actually saw more in some of the snippets that ND sent out.
Right. Yeah. The 55-second YouTube clips that include 13 seconds of Riley Leonard. So yeah, I mean, I think one, he looks healthy, right? I mean, there's no indication when you watch him play that he's come back from ankle injuries. Or I guess just one injury, but ankle surgeries. And so that's obviously the first checkpoint. But beyond that, he seems in command of the offense. He looks more comfortable with every practice that we've seen him, and is really on point with his accuracy and seems to have good rhythm and timing with his wide receivers that is developing, which obviously he's sort of doing that on a little bit of a condensed timeline because of some of the time he missed in the spring. But all signs from Riley Leonard that I've seen seem positive. Would you share that same perspective?
I have too. I like the way he carries himself in practice. Again, we see more kind of warming up and drill stuff than we actually do that shows timing and his running ability and things of that nature. But he looks good from what little we can see. And if you just kind of walked into practice and you didn't really know the situation, I think you could guess that he was the number one quarterback. If you knew basic football stuff, I think he kind of looks the part. What I think was a little bit more revealing was the conversation with Riley Leonard. We had a chance, both of us did, to sit down in the big group interview on Saturday. I was maybe a couple minutes late because I was over with Max Bola, the linebackers coach, so I missed maybe the first question or two. But Tyler wrote a really cool story. And I'm wondering, Tyler, what maybe your biggest takeaways were from your conversation with Riley.
Yeah, he talked about being in the team hotel, and so he gave us some information, but I had to reach out to get some more information to make sure I understood him, he was being literal. And he talked about how much he's loving camp and that he loves camp so much that he didn't want to move out of the team hotel, so he stayed in the team hotel. And my understanding is last Thursday night, the team, the older players that have like off-campus housing, I believe it's probably just most of the off-campus housing already available to them, could move out of the team hotel, and they were being trusted for the rest of the preseason to be fine on their own and not staying with the team at the team hotel. But Riley Leonard decided to stay in the hotel. He wants to be with his team, be sort of locked in, and have no distractions. And that seems to be paying dividends for him. He's confident in his physical and mental preparation. He's never been more prepared in his life, he said, physically and mentally. And the other thing I thought was interesting is just sort of his perspective on the relationship with offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock and the freedom that Denbrock gives him as the quarterback. He's okay with, he being Denbrock is okay with Leonard making some mistakes if he understands why he made them, and is doing them in a way that he's trying to take advantage of the defense, and not just for a lack of being prepared. So I think it was, I mean, I don't know how many times we've talked to Riley Leonard since he's been here, maybe 4 or 5. Everyone has been pretty informative, impressive. He's got a very nice personality. He's very easy to talk to. He's like sort of quietly confident. I described his personality as sort of like he's outwardly aw shucks kind of, but like he definitely doesn't lack in confidence. So it's not like he thinks he's in this spot by accident. So very, very much looking forward to see how he handles everything when obviously some adversity could be coming down the road when you get into a football season.
Yeah, the aw shucks thing is good because I think he surprised the person that maybe asked the question. They said, how does CJ Carr compare at the same stage, when you were a freshman to him as a freshman? He's like, wow, it's not even close. He's so far ahead of where I was. Yeah. And was pretty effusive in his praise of CJ Carr. I think we might have some Riley Leonard questions coming up here. I think I saw some in the queue. I'm going to go.
Yeah, here's one from Rajon. Do you get any vibes from the other players about Leonard?
He gets asked about by a lot of players, and the common theme is what a great leader he is and how confident they are in him being the leader of the offense. That's why, Marcus not having officially named a quarterback is going to get a great big duh when he finally does, because you get that. But I'm going to read a quote here from Max Bola when he was asked about Riley Leonard. Now, he goes against Riley in practice, and he was asked about Riley's competitiveness. Is there an example that sticks out or anything like that? And Max, the linebackers coach, said, well, the game against Duke sticks out to me last year. I mean, when we watch the game, the guy's a winner. We planned for him all week, and it's hard. Like, it's just hard to play against a quarterback like that. He lives upstairs. The whole quarterback room lives in Gino's office. They're always up there. To me, you see it on the practice field because he's kind of quiet in there when I'm around him, but you see it out here. Like when his eyes light up, when his eyes come down on there on the goal line, he's running the ball in. I think he's someone that, quite frankly, I maybe won't have a good answer for that question until we play a game, because I think it's going to even be more what I've seen. I'm excited for him. He's a hell of a player. And I would say from teammates and other coaches, you get these kind of answers to that question about Riley Leonard.
Yeah, it's definitely positive. Everyone talks about him in a positive manner. That a lot of guys talk about sort of his personality and his leadership and just the way he sort of acclimated to the team. Gino Guidugli, the quarterback's coach, talked about the way it wasn't long before Riley Leonard seemingly knew everyone's name, even walk-on freshmen. Like he wanted to make sure he knew who everyone was and didn't feel like he's bigger than anyone else. And that's an interesting way to lead. And then obviously going out on the field and showing that he deserves that, which he hasn't had as much opportunities to do that, like we know because of his injury in the spring. But it seems like from everything that he's done in preseason camp, folks are very confident in what Riley Leonard can do for this Notre Dame team.
So Tyler, I'm going to put you on the spot with this question. At this juncture, is Notre Dame with Leonard and Mike Denbrock better off than the Irish were at this time last year with Sam Hartman and Jared Parker? And do you think that for the long term as well?
Well, by technicality, you could say no because they're not playing Navy in the season opener. But yes, I think at those two spots specifically, I think Notre Dame has better talent. You can't say more experience when you compare Sam Hartman to Riley Leonard, because Sam Hartman has more experience than Riley Leonard does, but certainly Denbrock has more experience than Jared Parker does. But yeah, I think that combination is something that opposing defenses are more worried about than maybe what they were with Sam Hartman and Jared Parker. And but as we saw last year, there's so much more that goes into the offense than just the quarterback and the play caller. You got to have playmakers on the field helping out those guys. And I think that'll be another thing that could potentially be an advantage in this season's Notre Dame team compared to last season.
And then from the flip side of that, they don't have the tackles that they had last season.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the other quarterbacks also came up for interviews: Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchie, CJ Carr. I can speak to that, Tyler, unless you wanted to jump in there about anything that you learned from those guys.
Go ahead, and I'll fill in any gaps if there's something that I recall that you don't highlight.
Well, I'll tell you, CJ Carr definitely does not act like a freshman or play like a freshman. Even in interviews, he's really, really insightful, and he talked about how much he's getting from being around Riley Leonard, and you know, he was one of the guys that went down to Fairhope, Alabama with the wide receivers. Riley Leonard worked out with Phillip Rivers, talked about what a great experience that was. Also talked about how he kind of paces himself in terms of his own progress, not trying to think too far ahead. I mean, really, CJ Carr, this is about getting ready to compete for the 2025 starting quarterback job and putting himself in the best position for that. But I think he breaks it down even to smaller segments and really is able to focus on his own improvement. He was just really interesting to hear from Kenny Minchie. He got asked point blank why he stayed at Notre Dame, if he were frustrated about, you know, maybe not being higher than number 3 on the depth chart. I mean, he may be actually 4. I don't think they've really tried to define 3 and 4 at this point. And I thought he had an interesting answer in that Gino Guidugli and the way that he teaches and the fact that he feels like he's being developed is a big part of it. The camaraderie at Notre Dame, everything Notre Dame brings as far as a brand is a big part of it. You know, some of the other answers I think were kind of what you expect from a third string quarterback in terms of how he's trying to develop. I do think he really likes the Denbrock offense because he feels like his skill set maybe fits in that better than it did in Jared Parker. With Steve Angeli, we had a really limited transcription of that interview. There wasn't a whole lot discussed other than he throws to some of the wide receivers. He likes the wide receivers and what they bring to the table. But you didn't get into the mentality of what's it like to be number 2 and his preparation and being prepared for number one. Maybe in some of the early interviews, we got a little bit more of that. But those are my takeaways from the backup quarterback interviews.
Yeah, and I think in terms of what we've seen from them, I think, and my sense is that Angeli has handled things well in what could be a difficult situation. He's played pretty well and maybe can take care of the ball a little bit better, but is someone that Notre Dame fully trusts as a backup quarterback. I feel like Kenny Minchie's the guy that I feel like I've learned the least about over the last several months. It's just he seems to sort of be, and maybe that sort of leads you to like why someone would ask him why you stay, because he sort of feels like the odd man out. Now he can prove people wrong by playing better than that and working his way up the depth chart, but I don't get the same sense for. And even when you talk to like Gino Guidugli, you don't hear him sort of stop what he's talking about to sort of overtly praise what he's doing. Like there was a quote Guidugli had about CJ Carr. He said CJ is going to be a really good player. At the end of the day, that's what it is. He's got some growth to still do to understand our offense, understanding defenses, but to be a freshman, to be where he's at in August of his freshman year, he has a chance to be really good. And like the CJ Carr hype train couldn't be any more like full steamed. Like the fact that Notre Dame doesn't need CJ Carr right now helps that be tempered in some way. But anytime you talk to CJ Carr, you watch CJ Carr, it's like, man, that kid, he looks like this one's going to work out for Notre Dame. So I feel like that's the one that we hear the most about, or maybe jumps out the most at you. Of those backup quarterbacks, but maybe that's just a product of us not knowing him as well as some of those other guys.
Okay, the last part of this segment I wanted to get to, and then we'll take a run through the question queue before we get into our next topic. We had Brandon Wimbush on the Inside ND Sports podcast last week. I suggest you listen to that if you have time, you're in the car or taking a jog. I had a story on him today, taking a position with Dual Track as the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. And we talked about him, his time as a dual threat quarterback at Notre Dame, his impressions of Riley Leonard. And I'm curious, Tyler, anything strike you greatly about what Brandon had to say during our time with Brandon?
Yeah, I asked him something about like how do you protect yourself as a mobile quarterback, and he talked about sort of there being an art to that, an art to running with the ball, an art to getting rid of the ball. I think he called it like an it factor, a swag factor to quarterbacks that know how to not take hits and to take hits. Tony Romo was someone he highlighted as that does a good job of like spinning away after he gets rid of the ball. Kyler Murray was another guy he talked about who knows how to get down and out of bounds at the right times. And so those would be things that Riley Leonard has to do to protect himself. Obviously has gone through his share of injuries during his college career. So I thought that was sort of cool to hear Brandon Wimbush's perspective on that as someone who obviously had real life game experience trying to protect himself as a dual threat quarterback.
Yeah, I enjoyed his story when I asked him. I said, if you could do it all over again, would you come back for the 2019 season instead of transferring to UCF? And he said, yeah, he would come back to Notre Dame. Now, he would have changed positions, and at that time didn't want to let the quarterback dream go, and talked about how in the hotel room at the bowl game, Tommy Rees kind of laid out the plan for 2019, had Brandon opted to come back. But, I think it worked out well for him anyways, but I think he really, really enjoyed his time at Notre Dame and would have liked to given it a go as a flanker or as a running back.
All right. Before we get into some questions from you guys, I wanted to take a moment to tell you about a new partner that Inside NC Sports has now, and it's Autograph. You can now find Inside ND Sports content on the Autograph app, which is a free to download app on Android and iOS devices. The company Autograph was co-founded by Tom Brady, and it believes that devotion should be rewarded and the future of fandom belongs to the fans. You can download the app using the QR code at the bottom of our screen, or using the link that's listed in the video description, and find our content in the Notre Dame community. And make sure when you do that, you use the referral code INDS, like in the letters are inside ND Sports, INDS, so Autograph knows that we sent you.
And speaking of autographs, Tyler's is up for grab if you have a really good question and want his badly.
All right. So, yeah, let me get into our questions here from the viewers. Sorry, I got to click on a couple things here. All right, I'm back. Let's start with this one from Smoking Scott. Hey, guys, hearing some mixed messages about Howard Cross III's foot being injured.
Tyler, you did a feature on him. I think it's kind of a precautionary thing that they're kind of holding him back, that he's not doing as many reps and wants to be in there and is chomping at the bit. That was kind of the sense I got. What did you hear when you did the feature?
Yeah, Howard Cross is dealing with a hamstring issue. That's why he's been limited. I think there was a moment that someone thought he had a foot injury in the practice. I know there were parents and other people that were attended practice on Saturday. We were only there for the first 5 periods, so we didn't see the whole thing. But I don't think there's anything too concerning about it. When we talked to both Howard Cross and Al Washington last week, Al Washington was like, hey, blame me for him not getting in there as much as maybe you'd like to see him, because we're just being precautious. We want to make sure he's ready to go, because obviously he's a very valuable part of Notre Dame's a defensive line. So I don't think there's a major concern there as it relates to Howard Cross. All right. And that's the same thing, Jeff Stevens. I think
Jeff had the more accurate diagnosis.
Yeah. Let's see. Rajon says, in a couple clips, it looks to me that Tosh Baker is moving his feet a tad quicker. Is that the Lauren Landau effect? Am I crazy, or both?
I will say this about Lauren Landau, that the players have been really excited about what they were able to do with him in the offseason, in the spring, in the summer, in terms of position-specific drills. I'm not sure that I am willing to go out on a limb and compare Tosh Baker, because I wasn't watching him, the old Tosh Baker, that much to compare it to the new Tosh Baker. What I have been doing is watching a lot of the offensive line drills since he has become the starter, when he was even competing with Emil Wagner at right tackle. And I will say this, he doesn't get yelled at a lot. So he's either doing things right, or they're waiting to do the yelling until after we're out of the practices. What do you say, Tyler?
Yeah, I don't know that I've seen a significant difference in Tosh Baker's foot speed. I do think that would be something that would greatly help his ability to play at a higher level. So I think maybe that's wishful thinking on Rajon's behalf, but
don't
I do
call him crazy, though.
I will not call you crazy, Rajon. Speaking of Lauren Landau, do you think Landau pushed Charles Jagusa too hard, or perhaps Jagusa tried too hard to impress Landau and tore his pectoral? That question is from Joe Long.
I don't think so. I mean, whenever there's an injury, it seems like, and it's not just in our family, I think it's a fair question, but people want to know how responsible it is that the strength and conditioning coach somehow worked their way into it, that or factored into this negatively. And I think, based on how much Notre Dame leans into sports science, I think they probably prevent injuries. And that was even true under Matt Bayless. They had machines and they had techniques to see when a muscle was getting overstressed. And they have the GPSs that measure fatigue and measure how much you're using your body and so forth. And again, try to guard against overuse. So I don't think so. I mean, Charles is a guy that was a wrestler in high school. So, I mean, he was going at it pretty hard all the time when he was in high school. And he also had a pretty serious knee injury in his senior year before he was at Notre Dame. I just don't put the two and two together. And again, the message that I'm getting from the players is that they don't feel like they're being overworked with Lauren, but they feel like they're being worked hard, but they feel like it's congruent to what they're doing on the field. So I think if there's ever a strength and conditioning coordinator who can wipe out injuries, that guy should be the highest paid.
Well, I mean, to me, the biggest reason you can rule this out is because it happened in like a scrimmage setting. It wasn't like Charles Jagger tore his pec in the weight room, even. So, like, it's not even necessarily something that Lauren Lando was instructing him to do. It was during a practice that Notre Dame had, and whatever he did caused that injury. And now maybe you could argue that he was more sore than he should have been going into that practice. I don't know. I think that's speculation. So I wouldn't make that leap unless I had more evidence to make that leap. Bob Bolt asks, has the weather back there been sufficiently hot to acclimate the team to conditions at Texas A&M?
In week one, it very much was. Lately, it has been really, really, really nice. So no, it's not similar to what we would anticipate at Texas A&M, but who knows? It could be a cold spell down there, but it has not been humid, and it's been really pleasant the last week or so.
Yeah, it was hotter early on in camp for Notre Dame. And so this recent stretch isn't that hot, but it gets pretty disgusting in the IAC if they want to spend plenty of time in a hot and humid building. Even when we're up interviewing coaches, some coaches will be like, man, it's so hot and humid in here. So I oftentimes, maybe too much information, I'm sweating while we're just standing there talking to people because it's kind of gross in there based off all the heat that gets sort of stuck in that building.
Pete Sampson, who's on our beat, was telling me that there was a player that was sitting in one of these cloth chairs, and he got up, and Pete didn't realize what had happened, and he sat down in it. And I mean, he literally was wet. He needed a diaper.
All right. One more question before we move on. A couple things here from Eric Swope and Jeff Stevens had a follow-up. Would like us to go over the newest NCAA football rules for 2024, including helmet communication and its impact with crowd noise, and is Freeman ramping up the volume at practice to prepare for it? And then Jeff followed up with, how exactly does the helmet communication work? Let's say as Drake Bowen comes in for Jack Kaiser, does the feed just activate on his helmet? Who is responsible for activating the games in helmet, or the helmets in game? Sorry.
Okay, so let me try to explain the helmet part of this. So each unit, offense and defense, has one person that can have the helmet on at a time, or have the communication live at a time. So you would assume it's going to be Riley Leonard on offense and Kaiser on defense, but they've been practicing with multiple guys having it in practice, so they get used to it, at least on defense. And then they'll narrow it down to that one person in games. And so when Kaiser isn't there, it's not like he has to hand off his helmet. They'll activate it in a different helmet. It has a green dot on it so that I think everybody knows who the person is that's communicating. I believe it cuts off 15 seconds before the snap.
Correct.
So they're doing a hybrid of signals and doing the helmet communications. As far as the noise, other than the typical music that's playing when we've been in there, I mean, nothing special to Texas A&M. But apparently when we're not in there, they are doing a lot of that, because some of the players have mentioned some of the things that they've done in terms of simulating crowd noise and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I don't know who exactly is responsible for activating the helmet in game, like who that falls on. Maybe that's something we get some clarity on. But I wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame would protect that, because it just feels like another person to get blamed for something. But
the same person that sent 10 men on the field.
Yeah, right. The only other rule change for 2024 that I can think of is that there's now a 2-minute rule. or a 2-minute stoppage. What do they call it? What's the word?
2-minute warning.
2-minute warning. Sorry, I totally blanked on the word warning, which maybe is a good warning that I need to take a nap. But I think that's the only really major one. We saw games being played without stoppages after first downs last season, and so I think that that's just a slight change. I don't know that there's any other major ones that we expect. It sounded like you were typing, Eric. Did you find anything else that is worth highlighting?
I'm looking at the 2-minute warnings, the helmet communication. It doesn't.
Right,
those look like the two biggest right there. There's some real ticky-tack ones.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Bob Alvey asked, "Is the offense wearing white in practice as a result of the jersey scrimmage, or because their first game will be on the road?"
Jersey scrimmage, and it's been forever since they had flip-flopped those jerseys. Yes, they got to wear the white jerseys in practice. That's what the jersey scrimmage allows you to do.
Yeah, I think there's been times at practices where I have to do like a double take. Like, okay,
I know
which team's wearing, or which side of the ball is wearing what, because I'm just so used to seeing the offense.
I mean, I really think it was the Van Gorder era the last time that there was that flip-flop.
So you mean the Van Gorder's defense somehow won the jersey scrimmage?
No, that the offense won it. That was the last time the offense won the jersey scrimmage and got to wear the whites for practice.
Oh, I'd assume that the Blues were the victors. I would assume you'd want blue rather than white, but I don't know. I guess I don't remember who won the jersey scrimmage.
The offense won the jersey scrimmage.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Which was a big surprise, given how good the defense is.
Question from We Are Not Marshall, Tyler / Eric. Expectations for Leonard is to break in a new Denbrock offense, have mid to high success, and lead the team to the playoffs. This sets the table for the QB room. Oh, so this is not a question. It's just an answer to the question that's in our headline. What are fair expectations for Notre Dame quarterback Riley Leonard?
Okay. Does he get a bonus
Gold star
for that?
Gold star.
Gold star. Okay. And a Tyler James autograph.
Yes. Just send that to P.O. Box. Never going to happen.
Tyler asked me if I had ever got asked for an autograph after practice.
I'll give some context to that. We were just hanging out around, waiting. I think after a practice, to begin. For
after
interviews.
Our media viewing, and we're getting ready for interviews, so we're standing outside waiting to go in for the interview.
Yeah, and sometimes there will be fans that are lingering around the area to get autographs, and I was like, it sort of struck me. I was like, Eric, has anyone ever asked you for an autograph in one of these situations? Now there are much fewer people there now than there have been in the past because Notre Dame has been asking to keep that information private of when they're practicing, in large part due to the fact that there is construction going on in the area and there's not a lot of places for people to stand around. So I think I was just curious. I was like, if anyone had ever come up to Eric to ask for his autograph in that kind of setting.
And I did admit it happened once, and I did ask the person, I said, why? So
Irish fan do it. Irish fan asked who number 88 on defense is, and that is Armel Mukum. He is sort of the ascending interior defensive tackle that has been asked to play more in light of the injury to Gabriel Rubio, and from all reports has been doing a pretty decent job at taking the next step and being prepared as a potential third stringer there.
Big surprise, especially this early in his career. There's sometimes they recruit somebody and you go, boy, I wonder if he'll ever play. And he's already worked his way into the very cusp of the rotation. So good on Armel. And he was injured quite a bit in the offseason.
All right. I think that's all I got on the questions. We have one recruiting question. It's about Brandon Logan, and we'll talk about him before we wrap up.
Okay. We're going to go to linebacker. So linebacker coach Max Bola had an intense, fun, and colorful media session on Saturday in which he was adamant there are no freaking ones and twos. He used a different word But instead of 5-man rotation in which all 5 players are learning all 3 linebacker positions, although they may not be deployed in all 3 in a game. Those 5 are 6th-year vet Jack Kaiser, junior Jalen Sneed, sophomores Drake Bowen and Jaden Osbury, and freshman Kingston Viliamu-Asa. Tyler, do you think this is a good concept and an effective idea?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I like it more if it's used to put guys in different positions based on game situations that sort of highlight their strengths. Like, to me, I don't think it's okay, Jack Kaiser, you get one series, Drake Bowen, you get the next series. I don't like that. I don't like it to be as strict as that. And sometimes I feel like the defensive line in past years has sort of put themselves in spots where it's like, okay, this is a big situation. Do we really need to have the second string defensive line in the game right now? Like, let's be a little bit more flexible with our rotations. So as long as it's highlighting the skill sets of those guys, I'm in favor of that. Like, get Kingston Viliamu-Asa on the field in pass rush situations, play Drake Bowen in early downs against the run. Those kinds of things I think make sense to me in terms of trying to find roles for all those guys. What do you think?
I agree to a certain extent on what you're saying, and I don't think it's okay, let's rotate now, because they're all learning all 3 positions, and I do think that what you said is they're going to tailor these to what they do well. For example, I think we'll see Kingston Viliamu-Asa rushing the passer some. We're going to see Jaden Osbury in coverage a little bit more. But it was interesting because I asked Max, how do you create continuity with this? And he said, you know what? He goes, I was a little bit concerned about that at first because this is not how I played as a player. This is not how I coached last year. He goes, but these guys kind of forced the issue with playing so well, and they've been able to pick up on all 3 positions. Now, again, I don't think you'll see, for example, Jaden Osbury playing middle linebacker, and I don't think you're going to see Drake Bowen playing rover. But I do think you may see guys play 2 positions, and there's going to be times there's only 2 of them on the field. There's going to be times maybe there's 4 of them because they'll drop linebacker down to play Viper. So I like the fact that these 5 guys are getting on the field, and it's playing well in recruiting. We'll see if they can reel in those last 2 really, really good linebackers. But
right.
Notre Dame has done a good job of selling, hey, if you can play here early. We'll get you on the field. And we play a lot of guys, and I'm excited about the linebacker core. I think my expectation of them is different than a lot of the fan base's expectations, where they're kind of worried about their youth. And I asked Max Bola about their youth, and again, he's pretty exuberant and has some colorful language, and so he is not worried about their youth.
All right, yeah, I think Max Bola is someone that I really like. He's probably towards the top of my list in terms of coaches I enjoy talking to on Notre Dame's current staff. Not that there's a lot that I don't enjoy talking to, but he brings a lot of energy, and he's pretty blunt about the way he talks about things, which is nice to hear.
I really liked the linebacker group last year. I thought J.D. Bertrand was pretty underrated. To me, Maris Leofau was still kind of hot and cold. I think maybe his best football is still ahead of him. And then Jack Kaiser was really effective last year. But I like this group better. I think they're more athletic. I think they have more versatility. And I'm wondering what you're thinking, Tyler, in comparing the 2 groups.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's going to be hard for this group to be more consistent than last year's group. We talk about a group of veterans that have been through a lot. But I do think there's a chance that this year's group can be better in terms of playmaking, making more impacts in terms of pass breakups, interceptions, turnovers with fumbles, rushing the passer. I just think there's a better chance for this group of linebackers and the talents that they have to make some more plays than they did. Now, will there be times where some of these linebackers won't be in spots they need to be? I would guess that the answer to that will be yes. in comparison to the guys from last year. Now, that doesn't mean that number is going to be huge. Like, the amount of times that's going to happen is huge. But my sense is that there could be some times where Notre Dame gets caught in a bad spot because of the inexperience at that linebacker position.
So Kahana Kia is out of action for 2024 with a torn ACL. So that knocks them down to 8 total linebackers that are on scholarship. The 3 that aren't in this rotation are Preston Zinter and then a couple of freshmen, and Bodie Cahoon and Teddy Rizak. So, Tyler, first of all, do you feel like there's enough depth in the linebacker core? And the second part of that is, if somebody got injured, which of those 3 do you think is the most likely to move into the rotation?
Yeah, I think there's definitely enough depth. Like, 5 guys seems like plenty at the linebacker position. And I think that there's not, like, it wouldn't be the end of the world if Notre Dame had to go to a 6th person. And I think Preston Zinter would be that next guy as the 6th linebacker. In terms of those other freshmen, Bodie Cahoon and Teddy Rizak, I feel like I've seen Teddy Rizak flash more than Bodie Cahoon. And maybe that's just because he's a bit more athletic and running around making some more plays in some of the settings that we see these guys in, that rather than some of the situations that maybe plays to situations that Bodie Cahoon can make plays in.
The read I got from Max on those 2 was that Bodie goes at 100 miles an hour, and sometimes he's making mistakes going 100 miles an hour. And if they can get that intensity with being assignment correct, they've got something and they feel like they're going to get there. Rizak is not making mistakes, but he's 207 pounds right now. And I think so that's where physically he's got to get stronger and bigger. His twin brother, who's a quarterback, almost looks bigger than Teddy, Anthony Rizak.
Yeah, maybe the red makes him look bigger.
Or maybe they switch places and they're trying to trick us. Okay, the last 2 guys I want to talk about in this segment before we run for more questions or get comments or both, or answers to our question, is Kingston Viliamu-Asa and Jalen Sneed. Now, I did a feature on Sneed. You did one on KVA. So I want you to tell me what you're hearing and seeing about and of Kingston Viliamu-Asa, the freshman.
Yeah, the Viliamu-Asa story I ran with was just sort of the way that he has already impressed as a pass rusher. Dylan McCullough, when he talked about when he was asked who were linebackers that give his backs the running backs the most trouble as pass rushers, Kingston Viliamu-Asa was the second one he named after Jack Kaiser. And then he went on and talked about Viliamu-Asa for a little bit about what makes him good. He's sort of crafty, he said, and he has a good idea of what he wants to do and finds ways to get through. And so I just everyone, even Jalen Sneed, like he was overly effusive about how impressed he's been with Kingston Viliamu-Asa, and he just seems like a natural. Like, there's guys that come to Notre Dame where you see them on the field, you're like, okay, yeah, they got this one right. I don't think there were many questions about that as it relates to Kingston Viliamu-Asa, who was a 5-star according to Rivals. But everything is sort of matching up with what the expectations are, and the expectations obviously were very high given that he is a 5-star prospect, one of the best linebackers in the country.
So for me with him, and then I'll talk about Jalen Sneed, KVA, I think it's really, really good athletic ability and really intelligent. And the guy works his butt off on film study and stuff like that too. So he's accelerated his progress, I think, with his hard work. They had the pass protection drill with the running backs, and the running backs actually did pretty well. They were going against mostly linebackers, a couple of the defensive ends, and I think Kennedy Urlacher was in that group, that drill as well. But KVA had some moves. Now, I'll tell you what, Aeneas Williams won one of the reps against him. I mean, he got crushed in the other one. So Aeneas Williams was pretty impressive as a running back and stopping that. I thought all the running backs did a pretty good job. But Kingston, man, the speed and the spin moves that he has were pretty impressive. Now, to move on to Jalen Sneed, I asked Max Bulla about Jalen, and I said, he's always been a kind of an elite athlete. Do you see signs he's going to be an elite linebacker? And he was pretty excited to talk about Jalen, the fact that he felt like Jalen was, amazingly improved in just about every way. And you talk to some of the teammates like Jack Kaiser, talked about there's a maturity to Jalen Sneed in his game and in the way he's approaching the game, and that's showing up in the way he's able to play. But it was hard to do it because Max Bulla was doing it with his hands, comparing and it was like, and he's up to here. And so I think that Jalen Sneed, we've been waiting for this breakthrough season. Max Bulla at least feels like it's going to happen. I can't say that I have seen it consistently in practice. I'm not saying that he's loafing or not doing the things. I haven't watched the linebackers as much, except in certain drills like the pass protection drill and so forth.
Yeah.
But Max is watching them all the time, and he is pretty fired up about Jalen Sneed.
Yeah, generally, like the settings that we get in the first 5 periods, like running backs and linebackers, there's not always a lot to observe. Like it seems like a very like rudimentary basics things that they're doing that it's like, I'm not smart enough in linebacker or running back play to sort of break down the 4 or 5 steps that they're taking to get to the spot they're being asked to get to. So I'm going to watch someone else during those times. So, but yeah, the one-on-one pass rush between the linebackers and running backs was certainly a fun one to watch.
Do we want to hit questions or move to O-line stuff next?
Well, maybe the one question I saw in here that is O-line related is from Jeremy Welling. So let's use that as a transition. I want to know if Tosh Baker's light has come on at left tackle.
Well, I'll tell you what, they don't have a lot of other alternatives, to be honest with you. Again, in what I've watched, it feels like he's assignment correct. Is that an improvement? I mean, in the Pro Football Focus rankings from last year, he was Notre Dame's lowest ranked offensive player, any position, including people that didn't play very much. So him being assignment correct, I think, is a big deal. I think what I want to see beyond that is Tosh is 320 pounds now. There were a lot of times during his career he was playing below that or right at 300, and he's 6'8". At 320, I'd like to see him be a little bit of a butt kicker and have a little bit of an attitude. I don't know that we have a chance to see that in drills, but I think that's what I'm going to be kind of watching for in the minimal. What do we have? One more partial practice we get into, Tyler, I think is it.
Yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah.
So in that one, and then just trying to hear some things behind the scene, but that would be my impression of him, that at least he's getting things right.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Like I don't. Sometimes when and maybe this is my bias or me like leaning on my own previous opinion versus what I have or haven't seen yet. But like when I hear compliments about Tosh Baker, I hear them with like skepticism in my own head. So when Joe Rudolph talks positively about Tosh Baker, I'm not maybe as willing to buy it as I may be if he's talking about someone who I've seen do more successful things with my own eyes. So I don't have the answer to Jeremy's question, unfortunately, and I think it's one that's going to play a big role in how the season plays out for Notre Dame, because obviously the left tackle is a very important role, and it's one that they have someone with some serious question marks slated to play as the starter.
I think among the two of us, I think I'm higher on Emil Wagner and his progress than Tyler was, unless you've caught up to me, Tyler. But the guys behind them are both true freshmen right now. You have Anthony Knapp at left tackle, and you have Garby Lambert at right tackle. Now, if something happened to one of the starters, I'm not necessarily saying one of those guys would move up to number one. I mean, you could put Sullivan Absher there. I guess you could move a guard there. Joe Rudolph was asked about that. trying to remember if it was Billy Schrouth that they would consider moving to a tackle. So those are some of the options, but it's an area where they can't afford an injury at this point, and they need to see improvement. But I didn't see anything where I was like covering my eyes or anything like that. And I do like the two freshmen. I think Garby Lambert is going to be a butt kicker in time, but I think right now he's learning. And I think once he gets the confidence and learns everything, because again, he was a June arrival, not a January arrival. I think he's in the two deeps to stay.
Well, I did have a cover your eyes moment when Tosh Baker jumped in the tempo drill on the second play. The first practice we saw of him at left tackle, like that can't happen. Having Joe Rudolph pretend like he's rushing at you shouldn't trigger you to jump off sides if you're going to be the starting left tackle. So that moment doesn't define Tosh Baker, but it was just like, oh, come on, this is who you're putting in at the left tackle position. And he's two snaps into what we've seen since then, and that wasn't a good moment for him. But obviously, that's not something that should prevent him from reaching his potential. I think you are right in your description of you liking Emil Wagner more than me. I think, like, to me, it would speak more highly of Emil Wagner if he was moved to left tackle. The fact that he wasn't, to me, means like he still has. Like he obviously isn't a well enough rounded player to play both ways now, or to play on either side of the line. Now he could certainly still be a great right tackle and just for some reason can't play well at left tackle. But if he was that great, like I feel like he should be able to do the left tackle thing. So that and maybe I'm holding that against Emil when it should be just held against Joe Rudolph because he's the one making that decision. And maybe he's making the right decision. None of us know that. We're all just trying to figure out things from our own perspective. And so it's going to be fascinating.
He just wants to confound you.
It's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out because it just everything seems to feel like people are being put in positions at the tackle spots because they have to, rather than like this guy is our best tackle. He's playing there for a reason. It's just sort of like, well, we got to put someone out there. And now it's probably not as bad as I'm making that sound and describing it that way, because obviously these are very highly recruited players, but it just there hasn't been enough there to give me a ton of confidence going into the season opener.
Okay, we're moving to guard talk. We're still seeing a battle between Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler at left guard. What will be the criteria that Joe Rudolph uses determining who's number one? Do you want me to answer that, or you want to?
Yeah, go ahead.
What he said was they have all the install in, and what happens sometimes is once you get the offense completely installed, some players play at different levels than pre-install. An example was last year with Billy Schrouth. Billy Schrouth was number one in the spring. They got the install in of Jared Parker's offense, and he got a little bit behind in terms of processing it. That's not happened to Billy Schrouth now. I mean, he's way ahead of the curve with that. So it's really going to come down to who is able to be more effective with that. If I had to guess, I still think Rocco's going to overtake Pat Coogan, but I haven't seen anything yet in practice that indicates that, other than the fact we saw Coogan taking some center snaps with the twos and Sam Pendleton taking his number 2 reps as a guard on Saturday. Maybe that was just some versatility. What were your thoughts on seeing that move?
Yeah, I think well, as it relates to that move, like I think it makes sense because Coogan needs to be prepared as the backup center because Sam Pendleton has had a recurring issue with snap accuracy. So even if Coogan is the starting guard or isn't, like there's a chance that if something happened to Ashton Craig, that maybe they'd be more comfortable with Coogan at center than Sam Pendleton. As it relates to the guards, to me, I thought something that is relative to the discussion with Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan was part of the conversation Joe Rudolph had when he was being asked, like, why is Emil Wagner not being put to left? Why is Tosh Baker a left tackle now when he was a right tackle in the Sun Bowl? And Joe Rudolph explained that as like it does matter to him who the guard and tackle combination is. Like he wants those players to complement each other and play well with each other. And so because left tackle now is Tosh Baker, I think that, and Tosh Baker being a more experienced player than say like an Anthony Knapp or Gerby Lambert, I think that leads me to believe that that gives an advantage to Rocco Spindler as someone who's maybe the more physical force at that guard spot than maybe a Pat Coogan, who maybe doesn't bring that same physicality, but is going to be on his P's and Q's as a better leader and mentor. And maybe we would do a better job of bringing along a inexperienced left tackle with him, which is what he was asked to do in the Sun Bowl with Charles Jagusa. So that's my sense. Now, maybe that's reading into things too much. But I think right now, if I had to pick, I would pick Rocco Spindler to win that job.
Okay. We're going to jump down to, I'm going to give you some 2-minute drill questions. So I just need a quick answer on this. Then we'll jump into questions and recruiting. But this is just for Tyler. And Rajon, you can answer too on the side. Okay. The AP All-America team comes out next Monday. We can only vote for a first team, and I'm one of the voters, though the AP will tabulate 2 teams. Who from Notre Dame should be considered for a first teamer?
I think it's Xavier Watts, Howard Cross III, and Benjamin Morrison, and in that order.
I think it should be Watts, Benjamin Morrison, and Cross in that order. I voted for 2. I limited myself to 2 per team. Now, I won't do that on the postseason team when things play out and so forth, but I did on the preseason team. For every team, I didn't have more than two guys from a certain team. Okay, is Notre Dame better off with Lauren Lando's approach to strength and conditioning? Joe Long, are you listening? Or more and leaning more into sports science, or is it too soon to tell?
It's definitely too soon to tell. And I think with strength and conditioning coaches, I don't know that we ever really know for sure, right? Like Matt Balis was the greatest thing to ever happen in Notre Dame football for a while, and all of a sudden it's all this wanting to be more forward thinking with sports science, and it's like, well, it seemed like it was working 3 years ago, but I don't really know. We rarely hear complaints while someone is here, so I don't know. I sort of shrug. Like I think they're very important, but I just think it's very hard to sort of measure the impact that they're making, because a lot of times we're not just given that information to know what sort of impact they're making.
Yeah, he's getting a lot of great feedback, and there's a lot of really good examples, but we need for the season to play out and see how it looks during the season. Is Jeremiah Love the best player on offense on the team?
Not yet, but he could be. I still would take Riley Leonard in that discussion. I'd also add that a healthy Mitchell Evans would be someone who has a strong case as well.
Next question. How confident are you that Mitchell
you don't want to
Evans
answer that one? That was the one you don't want to answer?
If you take Riley Leonard out of the equation, Love is the best player on the offense. If you put him in the equation, probably Riley Leonard, but Love at 210 pounds, I think is going to be a handful.
All right.
How confident are you that Mitchell, I was trying to transition since you said Mitchell Evans, will be ready for the opener and will be Indy's best tight end this season?
Fairly confident on the first part, though. I think it makes sense to be cautious, and I'm not a doctor, but I'm very confident in the second part. I don't think last season was a fluke, and I think he's going to continue to do good things for Notre Dame's offense.
I think he mentioned that he was just about ready to do everything in practice. He's done all the individual stuff. He's in pads and everything. He's not been in the team periods where they're scrimmaging and whatever. I think that's about to happen if it hasn't already in the days that we've not been in there since Saturday. Okay, Notre Dame finished 83rd in net punting last season. What's a ballpark ranking of where you think they'll end up with Aussie James Rendell?
I went with 16 for his jersey number. Notre Dame ranked 18th back in 2020 with sophomore Jay Bramblett. That was 41.28 yards in terms of net punting. 16th last year was 41.76. And then Notre Dame was 83rd last year. So that would be a significant increase, but obviously you're turning over a lot of personnel there. So I went with 16th, but I don't know. I'm just guessing at this point. But I've liked what I've seen from James Rendell so far.
Right. What hurt Bryce McPherson was touchbacks, returns, and so being able to be intentional with your direction, being able to keep it from rolling into the end zone,
Hang time,
and having the hang time to be down and covering the punt is going to help your average. I'm going to say 10th. And then the last one in this, the player who perhaps was not a standout in the early practices of camp, but who could make a move late in camp.
Because of the linebacker discussion, like we don't watch them a lot and we don't see a lot. So like anyone not named KVA, and I guess Jack Kaiser, I would say like they could make a move late in camp. Like maybe someone like Jalen Sneed becomes a guy that you take off the field less. Maybe Jay Nosberry, you have to put on the field more. I think those would be the guys that I would point to. And then maybe one other person would be like wide receiver Chris Mitchell, who I don't know that I saw a ton out of, and I think there's some question marks there, but I still think he has the potential to be really good if everything comes together for him.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Chris Mitchell as mine. Mike Denbrock wants him to be that guy, but he also admitted he's not that guy yet. So there's the room for him to become that guy. A lot of the other guys that we thought would move up have already done that. So I think Chris Mitchell is the guy that's been given the kind of reps that would allow him to make that move late in camp. Okay, do we want to do questions or recruiting quickly here?
Well, let me do a quick promo of our partners, Autograph, who I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
You can now find Inside ND Sports content on the Autograph app, which is free to download on Android and iOS devices. The company, which was co-founded by Tom Brady, believes that devotion should be rewarded and the future of fandom belongs to the fans. So you can get rewarded by reading content and listening to content in the Autograph app. You can download that app using the QR code at the bottom of our screen, as you see in the corners, or using the link that's listed in the video description below. And find our content in the Notre Dame community over there. And make sure you use referral code INDS. That's INDS as in Inside ND Sports. So Autograph knows that we sent you.
Okay.
All right, let's get back to some recruiting.
Okay, recruiting. The new Rivals 250 drops tomorrow morning. Some new 5-stars were introduced earlier today. What do we need to know about the new rankings?
Yeah, well, you'll need to know. Well, I'll tell you tomorrow when they come out. I can't give any spoilers, but the news that we learned today was that linebacker target Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng was moved up to a 5-star recruit. So if Notre Dame is able to sign him, the Irish could have 5-star linebackers in back-to-back classes with Kingston Viliamuasa in the 2024 class. And then we'll see where Notre Dame's commits and other targets land once that the full 250 gets released in the morning. And then Wednesday and Thursday, position rankings will be updated and then state rankings later in the week. So plenty of rankings discussions to unfold this week.
On Saturday, safety Brandon Logan committed to Notre Dame shortly after ending his commitment to Vanderbilt baseball, which he had been committed to them before he even entered Fort Wayne Snyder High School. And he's going to play both sports, allegedly, at Notre Dame. What's your sense of how good of a pickup Brandon might be for the football program?
Yeah, I think he's a low-risk in-state player with upside. I think if you're looking to fill in gaps in your class, which Notre Dame was after Ivan Taylor flipped to Michigan, those are the types of guys that you take chances on. Maybe I just like turning to some of the in-state programs, guys with good athletic traits, which Brandon Logan does. He's maybe a little bit undersized at safety, but has good speed, ran a 4.4 at the Irish Invasion back in June. So someone that Notre Dame liked a lot and was sort of covertly keeping an eye on as much as it could because he wasn't a big-time football recruit necessarily, and as the more quiet that Notre Dame could keep that, the fewer big-time schools would maybe try to come in and try to poach him out of Fort Wayne as someone that was going to Vanderbilt to play baseball. Vanderbilt even tried to sway him to try to play both sports at it and be on football scholarship at Vanderbilt, but the opportunity at Notre Dame was too hard for him to pass up. I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of there's good stories and bad stories in terms of in-state guys that have worked out or haven't worked out for Notre Dame, but I think he's a guy that could have a pretty good career, maybe somewhere between a Drew Tranquil and a Jack Kaiser during his Notre Dame career. Now I know that maybe that's a wide gap that I'm giving myself some leeway on, but we'll see how he continues to develop, because I think he's he's definitely a very good baseball player. I think more people are probably sold on him as a baseball player than a football player, but I think he has a potential to grow into quite the football player as well.
A quiet week on the Deuce Knight front. What are we thinking there? And then Adam Gorney had a little nugget today. You want to share that?
Yeah, Captain Crunch, I laughed at. He said, please no Deuce Knight talk. So you didn't listen to Captain Crunch. So shame on you. But he's not committed to anywhere else but Notre Dame, and that's a good sign as long as that remains the same. But it's definitely far from over with Auburn, Ole Miss, and maybe some others. And that information you're referring to is Bear Bachmeier reported that Notre Dame has been in touch with him. Bear is who Notre Dame was targeting around the same time when Deuce Knight ended up making his decision. Bear Bachmeier didn't sort of pull the trigger on a commitment. Deuce Knight did. Bear Bachmeier has since committed to Stanford and remains committed to Stanford. And so we'll see if Notre Dame needs to replace Deuce Knight, if Bear Bachmeier is the most realistic option, or if Notre Dame chooses to push for some others. I think I'm confident that Notre Dame will look at more than just one option if the Knight train moves on.
And his brother plays at Stanford as a wide receiver and has an animal name, but I can't remember it.
Tiger.
And he
that's not a joke. That's serious.
No. That's what my joke guess would have been. So that was the Brady Bunch's dog too. Anything new on wide receivers or linebackers getting close to committing?
No. And Jeff Stevens had a question about, it seemed like Nathaniel Wusu-Boateng and Madden Faremo might commit by the end of August, but no word seems to be pending. Thoughts on the decision timing? I don't have a great sense of Madden Faremo when he may want to wrap things up. Or honestly, Nathaniel Wusu-Boateng for that matter. I think if one were to decide before the other, I would probably lead towards Faremo. I still think Notre Dame's in a good spot with both of those guys. But I do think it's going to drag on a bit and not be wrapped up necessarily by the start of Notre Dame's season.
Before we give our great deal one more time, do we have time for a lightning round of questions or no?
From me or from the audience?
From the audience.
I don't know that I've seen any. Bob Alvey asked again about Howard Cross.
Are they just heckling us?
Bob, well, no, they're not heckling us. I think they're talking to each other and making comments, but nothing too bad. Ray John asked if it's true that James Rendell uses kangaroo leather cleats. So that made me chuckle. But Bob Alvey, he may have jumped in late, asked about Howard Cross's injury. And it's a hamstring issue that he's been recovering from. We have not received any information on an alleged foot injury that is serious. So I think that was some concern to some folks for some reason. All right. Well, that is it for us to on this week's Football Never Sleeps. That promo that Eric keeps talking about and we keep running at the bottom of our screen runs through Friday night. You can sign up for the first year of an annual subscription to InsideNDSports.com for just $24. That gets you access to all of our premium analysis, recruiting coverage, and our scoops over on the Insider Lounge. All you have to do is use the promo code NDCamp24 when you sign up to take advantage of the deal. There's a link to sign up in the video description below, and you can also find it across the top of our homepage on InsideNDSports.com.
We appreciate you. Thanks for everything, including all the great comments and the great questions.
Yeah, and if you whether or not you are subscribed to InsideNDSports.com, make sure you subscribe to us here. We'll be back next week. Another Football Never Sleeps. We'll be back later in the week with an Inside ND Sports podcast, and we hope you enjoy your week.